This model kit reviews of the Air Show combo, and this has both an F-16 Thunderbird and an F-18 Blue Angel. It's the deluxe kit, so it's supposed to include some paints and glue. It's a 1/48 scale model by Revell. It's the older Monogram molds. And here are the dimensions and pictures of the finished model. Here's some other pictures of the finished model. And some other pictures. Let's have a look inside and see what we have. So we have some white sprues for the F-16, looks like blue sprues for the F-18. Here you can see there's a lot of detail inside the wheel well. Fair amount of surface detail here for the F-18, but these are all raised panel lines, unfortunately. Here's the nose wheel well. Here's the top part of our fuselage with the wings. Also a fair amount of surface detail. Nothing inside there. Here we have some of the paints, and these are probably really old, but we can always give them a good stir and see if they're still usable. Here's our glue. This stuff never really goes bad. Let's have a look at this sprue here. So here we have our central fuel tank. We have our ejection seat. You can see there's some flashing and mold lines there. Here's our instrument panel, which has got some nice detail. We have some wheels. We do have some mold lines that are on some of these parts. Here are our wheel doors. We've got a pilot figure, and then our two different types of exhausts. And here's the back part of the engine. Here are the pylons, as well as bombs, some additional body parts, and weapons. Let's have a look over here. Here are our tails, and our stabilizer. We have our wheel parts. Molding's reasonable. There's a fair amount of flashing and mold lines. Those are easy to get rid of though. Here's our gear. This one's coming off already. Our nose gear, some pylons, and additional body parts. Here's the air intake, and our cockpit. Some nice detail there, and the nose, and these are our landing gear. Here we have looks like two canopies, one for each. And here's our F-18, here's the F-16. Let's have a look at our instruction guide. Here are decals. Looks like they're in pretty good shape still usable. Here are the instructions. Start off with the cockpit and build the ejection seat, and put that inside the cockpit. Pilot's glued in, and that's then put inside the fuselage. Exhausts are put on, as well as the stabilizer, and the fuselage is then glued together. And there are the colors needed. And next we put in the nose, air intakes, and additional sides of the wheel well. And next we put the fuel tanks on, wheel well doors, actuators, and then we start to put in the gear. There's the main gear going in, tail hook, and then gear doors. Here's our nose gear, air brake, and tails. And then here's our weapon systems with the pylons, if you're going to use those. And then here we have the canopy, open or closed, and then here's our our decal and paint guide. So that's the F-18. Let's have a look at the F-16. So here's our cockpit. As you can see, not much detail. We've got some flashing here. Here's our instrument panel. Also, not much detail there. Let's look at our instructions and decals here. The decals, these are still very good quality, still usable. And here are the colors needed. Start off with the cockpit. Roll the cockpit out with the ejection seat. That's then put inside the fuselage. And the exhaust put on. The air intakes then built with the nose wheel well put on, as well as the ventral fins. We'll put on the weapons and nose wheel, including the door. Here's our main gear going in, and the gear doors. Tail goes on, and nose and canopy, then a central fuel tank, and then weapons extra. Here is the painting and decal guide. Let's have a look at our sprues. So here's the top of our fuselage and wings. We have some flashing here. These are all raised panel lines, except for a few of them are recessed. We have our wheels here. Fair amount of detail on the inside of our gear door here. Here's our air intake, exhausts. Here's the back part of the engine. And these are the air intake parts here. Here's the tail, stabilizer, and central fuel tank. We've got our ventral fins here. Next we've got our nose. We've got the nose wheel well, gear doors, and main gear, central fuel tank. Over here we have the lower portion of the body, and here's our ejection seat, and the other parts of the ejection seat here. Here are our weapons, and all in all, fairly reasonable level of detail. It's an older mold. Decals are pretty good too.